So I will be sharing ICH M4QR1 guidelines so that we can draw parallels between what the summaries talk about and how they are related with the module 3 contents, right? So let's start with of module 2. So module 2 is see, we talked about module 1, which is data that needs to be submitted before that needs to be submitted when you're submitting any application to the FDA or any regulatory body, right? So today we will be talking about module 2, which is the of all the data that we submitted. Where you put in all the content that you're going to submit in module 2. Then comes your introduction where you give a brief of what is in the module 2, what data you're giving in module 2. Then comes your main part. The first one is your quality clinic, and the last one is your non-clinical. Okay, so we'll take up individually to understand what goes in the respective section. So we'll start with the QoS key elements. QoS, when I say QoS, it means quality overall summary, right? So I will also share with you the ICH M4QR1 guideline for a better you know, visual. Just a second. Okay, just stay with me for a minute. Okay, yeah. So this is what your module 2 content of table looks like. The first one that goes is table of content 2.1 section. Then is your 2.2 introduction. And then comes your 2.3, which is quality overall summary, followed by non-clinical overview, clinical overview, non-clinical written and tabulated summaries, and lastly clinical summaries. Okay, so first we'll talk about non-clinical overview, clinical overview, then we'll move to clinical non-clinical and clinical summaries. Okay, so when we talk about QoS 2.0 section, it's further divided into four subsections, which is your first is sorry, the first one is your 2.3 23S drug substance, which is further divided into seven sections. The first one is your general information, where you're providing general information about the drug substance, the name of the manufacturer, etc. In 23S2, we talk about manufacturer. We are just overviewing. We will take up each section individually. Then is your 23S3, S4, S5, S6, and S7. So all the information that is related to drug substance is summarized in 23S section. Then is your 23P section, where all the summaries related to drug product is submitted here under following 8 sections: 23P1 to P8. P1 is your description and composition of the drug product. Then is your pharmaceutical development, manufacturer, control of excipients, control of drug product, reference standards of materials, container closure system, and stability. After this, you also submit 23A appendices, where you talk about the facilities and equipment that are being required, or a summary of facilities and equipment. And 23A2 talks about adventitious agent safety evaluation. And 23A3 is your excipients. And lastly, we are submitting regional information. Once that is done under QoS, we also submit non-clinical overview, clinical overview, non-clinical written and tabulated summaries, and clinical summaries. Okay. So, yes, let's go to drug substance here. See, like it's written here, the quality overall summary is a summary that follows the scope and outline of the body data in module 3. All the body data that we are submitting in module 3, QO is basically a summary of all the data. We do not provide a lot of, numbers here in module 2. We only provide a summary of all the data that we've given and what does it conclude. Okay. The QA should not include information, data, or justification that was not already included in Module 3 or in other parts of CTD. You cannot provide, a suspicious or a foreign number or a foreign data in QoS, which is not, already provided in Module 3, because module 2 is just the summary of what all is present in module 3. You cannot provide extra information that is not tabulated, that is not recorded in module 3. Okay, so yes, the QA should include sufficient information from each section to provide quality reviewer with an overview of module 3. All the sections that you are submitting in module 3 should be summarized here well enough for a reviewer to understand what data he or she will come across when they are reviewing module 3 documents. Okay, the QoS should also emphasize critical key parameters of the product and provide, for instance, justification in cases where guidelines were not followed. When there are certain guidelines that are not being followed, then what we have to do is we have to provide a justification of why that guideline was not followed or what caused that guideline to be not followed in the QoS section itself, so that when the reviewer is assessing your module 3 documents, they know that this deviation was observed because of the guideline not being followed due to the justification provided in module 2. Okay, then the QA should also include a discussion of key issues that integrates information from sections in quality module and supporting information from other modules. So there should be a little bit of discussion provided in the quality overall summary, which talks about all the data, all the information, which integrates the information from the quality module, which is your module 3, and supporting information from other modules like qualification of impurities via toxicological studies, discussed in CTD-S module, and including, cross-referencing to volume and page numbers in other modules. So cross-referencing is a big game changer here in 2-3 QoS, because when you're referencing a certain document in this, they can easily navigate to that document to get a better understanding of what the terminology or what you are indicating in quality in module easily, right? Cross-referencing is a very big advantage when we submit a common technical document in the. So yes, QoS not exceed 40 pages. When you're just submitting a data for a generic product, should for a complex process, it should not exceed 40 pages. But in case if it is a bio, it including tables and figures. Most biodegradable included in the. Okay. So this is your breakdown of all the QoS sections that are being submitted, QoS summaries that are being submitted in 2-3S QoS. So the introduction should include proprietary name of the drug, non-proprietary name or common name of the drug substance, along with the company name, dosage form, strength, route of administration, and proposed indication. For example, in drug substance, you provide general information. All that information that is provided in section 3.2S1 of module 3 for drug substance will be summarized in 2.3S1 of 2.3S module 2. Then is your manufacturer. So information on the manufacturer, a brief description of the manufacturing processes, including, for example, reference to starting material or any critical steps or reprocessing intermediate that's being formed. Everything related to the manufacturing processes can be summarized in 23S2. Then a flow diagram is provided, which is also provided in 32S22. Now, what this section indicates, we will talk about them when we are talking about module 3. These are all for you. So when you get a better understanding of module 3 documents, you can, right? Apart from that, a description of the source and starting material and raw material of biological origin used in the manufacture of the drug substance should be standardized here. We describe a lot of already described in brief detail. Apart from this, a discussion, selection, and process will be summarized. Apart from that, a description of process validation or evaluation will be submitted in your 23S2 manufacturer, and a brief summary of major manufacturing changes made throughout the development and conclusion from the assessment will be described in as described in 32S26 will be summarized in the manufacturer section of 23S2. Okay, the QA should also cross refer to the non-clinical and clinical studies that used batches affected by these manufacturing changes as provided in CTDS and CTDE modules of the dossier. So QoS, in QoS you can also, cross refer to the clinical studies and non-clinical study reports that you'll be submitting in, module 4 and module 5 for easy navigation to understand the data that you submitted, to understand the summary that you submitted in QoS. Then is your characterization. For different products, you submit different characterization. There's a new chemical entity, there is a biotech product, or both new chemical entity and biotech product. Okay. So a summary of interpretation of evidence of structure, isomerism, etc. If there is any stereoisomerism presence or if there are any stereoisomers present, they should all be summarized here in the characterization section. Then comes your control of drug substances, where a brief summary of the justification of specification, which is also referred to as JOS, JOS. The analytical procedures and validation should be included. All the specifications that we've enlisted in 32 as 41 should be provided or summarized here in control of drug substance, along with a tabulated summary of batch analysis. So there are a lot of batches that are being analyzed during, manufacturing processes or validation or stability testing. A lot of data is collected, so all the data can be tabulated as a summary in QoS. Then is your reference standard of material. So all the information that we are providing in module 3 will be summarized in module 2. Then container closure system, and lastly your stability. These all were the elements of drug substance. Okay, just read through it once. Okay, so these are all your module 2 QoS for drug substance. Then comes your module 2 for drug product. Okay, there here we are submitting data summaries related to description and composition of the drug product, the pharmaceutical development. We will understand what pharmaceutical development is. It is further divided into a lot of sections that needs to be understood one by one. Then is your manufacturer. Here you have to put in information, the manufacturing process, all the summaries of that. for drug product, not drug substance. Drug substance we've covered in 2, 3S. Here, 2, 3P, we talk only about drug product. Then there's control of excipients, a brief summary of quality of the excipients that we've used in the production of in the manufacture of the drug product, the control of the drug product, and reference standard material, container closure system, and stability. The only extra data that we're submitting here is control of excipients and pharmaceutical development. Okay, so these were all the sections that are included in KOS. Apart from 2, 3S and 2, 3P, there is 2, 3A, which talks about appendices, wherein we are submitting summaries for facilities and equipment. In biotech, a summary of facility is as described in 3, 2A is summarized here. Adventitious agent safety evaluation, you have to provide a discussion or measures implemented to control endogenous or adventitious agents in the production. And lastly, excipients. You have to summarize the excipients that are being used in the drug product manufacturing. And last is your regional information, which talks about a brief description of information specific for the region as provided in 3.2R should be included. Okay, when we submit data in 3.2R, we are submitting very regional specific data. So there's a summary of that 3.2R can be presented in 2.3R. Then comes your module 3 quality. But before jumping to module 3 quality, we will go back to module 2 and talk about 2.4 to 2.7. What are the data that is being submitted in 2.4 and 2.7? I hope till 2.3 you understood what data goes. I'll summarize again towards the end of the class, but let's move to module 2.4.
कौन मांगता है रिमोट तो दे दो
Somebody is on.
पूजा भाई
Riya Bhaktar, your mic is on. Can you please mute that? Okay, so we'll start with module 2.4, non-clinical overview. Non-clinical data requirements talk about pharmacology, toxicology, pharmacokinetics, safety pharmacology, and environmental impact summaries, okay, or an overview. So in pharmacology, we'll submit data related to mechanism. We'll submit summaries related to the data that we've submitted in module 3, related to mechanism of action, target organ profile, efficacy studies. In toxicology data, we will talk about summaries of acute, chronic genotoxicity, carcinogenicity, or reproductive toxicity studies. And when we'll talk about pharmacokinetic summaries, we'll talk about ADME data, and followed by safety pharmacology and environmental impact. So all the safety pharmacology data, like effect on vital organs or systems, or environmental impact, ectotoxicity, environmental fate of the drug, etc., is being submitted in non-clinical data requirements. A summary of all the data. This data is presented in module 4, non-clinical data, and all the summaries of those data or the study reports are submitted in 2.4, non-clinical overview. Along with the technical aspect of non-clinical overview is data integration, data assessment, and regulatory guidelines. So it must be consistent with the study reports in module 4 and provide a high-level summary of pivotal studies and conclusions. Then critical review of non-clinical data needs to be done in order to provide a specific summary, identify major findings, safety margins, and relevance to human use. And lastly, it should follow ICH S6, S9, and S12 non-clinical study guidelines along with ICH M3 for study design. Okay, so this is what all goes in your non-clinical overview 2.4. All the data we are submitting in module 4 needs to be integrated, summarized, assessed in module 2.4. Then is your module 2.5, which will talk about clinical overview. Here we will talk about clinical development program and the technical aspects. So all the summaries of efficacy of pivotal clinical studies, primary and secondary endpoints of the clinical trials, and any statistical method that is being used during the clinical development program for efficacy will be summarized here, along with safety, risk benefit analysis, and study population. In safety, we will summarize all the serious adverse event, and clinical safety findings. We will submit risk benefit analysis, which will talk about evaluation of efficacy versus safety profile, a comprehensive evaluation, not a detailed one, because the detailed evaluation will be submitted when we are submitting data in module 5 of clinical trials, clinical data basically. Then lastly, you will also have to summarize the study population, the inclusion and exclusion criteria of the patients on which the clinical trial needs to be done, the demographics related to the clinical trial, and the generalizability of the data. So all the summaries related to study population will be submitted in module 2.5 for a clinical overview of what exactly they are going to be dealing when they study module 5 of clinical development. The technical aspect of submitting module 2.5 clinical overview is first study design overview, which to briefly summarize clinical trial designs from phase 1 to phase 3. Because in phase 4, we are mostly talking about the post-market surveillance, which happens once the drug is in the market, and over the time period, adverse effect reactions, post-marketing surveillance is done, and the data is being reported and analyzed. Okay, so for phase 1 and phase 3, we will include randomization. Uh, Randomization is a type of clinical trial that is being done along with blinding and controls. Then the second technical aspect would be data interpretation, where we will provide a critical evaluation of the clinical data, including subgroup analysis and overall efficacy and safety profile. And lastly, for compliance, to make sure that all the clinical data that we are providing adheres to the ICH E3 structure of clinical study reports, and ICH E6 good clinical practice, and FDA EMA guidelines on clinical data presentations. Okay, all the data should adhere to these guidelines, and in case the data is deviating from these guidelines, there needs to be we need to provide a justification in order to make sure that when they are reviewing the data in module 5, they understand why the deviation was observed. Okay. Then is your 2.6 and 2.7, which talks about non-clinical and clinical summaries. In non-clinical written and tabulated summaries, we provide a detailed description of preclinical studies, methods, results, and conclusions, summary of tables for non-clinical studies such as pharmacology, toxicity, and pharmacokinetics, and we ensure that a clear linkage between summary text and tables is provided for quick reference. And see, for example, you've written the data, you've written a summary, and then you're providing a table. You need to make sure that the summary that you've written and the data you're providing in the table are correlated and not deviating from each other. Okay. And then in clinical summaries, we provide a written summary where we include overview of clinical trials, highlighting efficacy, safety, and statistical outcomes. And along with that, we also provide a tabulated summary, which will summarize key data points, example study populations, results, adverse events presented in tables. Okay. Uh, we also ensure summaries are scientifically sound and provide enough context and reference detailed in Module 5. It shouldn't be very random summaries. It should be scientifically sound and should provide enough context to Module 5. Uh, shouldn't be like Module 5 may you are writing something that is not making sense with the summaries that you're providing in Module 5. That should in Module 2.7. That shouldn't be the case. All your data need to be aligned for a better review and faster approval. Okay. And the last one is your module 2.8, which is literature references. All the literature review and citations are provided in, module 2.8. The purpose of providing literature review and citation is to include relevant published data or reviews that support the submission. Example, pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamics, or safety data. You can cite only relevant and recent literature to strengthen submissions scientific foundation. If your submission is not based on any scientific foundation, that then the review gets more extensive and the approval gets delayed. So to make sure that your submission has a scientific foundation, you should submit a literature references. Then the technical aspect of submitting literature references is the citation style. You need to ensure that uniform citation style, example Vancouver or APA, as per the regulatory body's requirement, is maintained throughout the literature citing. Then linking to submissions. Provide proper cross references between literature data and submission contents, module 3, 4, and 5. And avoid excessive citations. Focus on only high impact studies that directly support the application. You shouldn't be citing everything that you find on internet or data that is present. So yes, citing is very important part in order to support your submission. Okay. So this was about your module 2. Here I have presented with an example of how submission looks like when you are doing a submission using a software. Here we have used Lawrence document. The language I have changed the language and everything, but I'll just zoom in for you. See, can you see this folder? The red folders. These are all your part of module 1. We will talk about these submissions in a different class, but just to give you an overview of how things are submitted, uh, this is your module 1 documentations. You submit your PDF files, you drop them down in these respective folders, name them accordingly, and once you've done that, you move to module 2 where you are submitting your data. Take for example, there's 2.1 where you're submitting a table of content. If it is a requirement for the respective regulatory body, then you're submitting an introduction under 2.2. In 2.3, you're submitting 23S data and 23P along with appendices and regional information, followed by non-clinical, clinical, summary overview and non-clinical tabulated data and clinical tabulated data, clinical summaries. Okay, followed by module 3, 4, and 5. So this is how put it, you drop down your PDFs in these folders or subfolders for submission, and you do the final submission. How it's done, we will talk about it in a separate class. But I hope module 2 is clear to everyone. If you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat box. We'll discuss them, and then maybe we can move to our next module, module 3. If you have any questions related to module 2, any doubt, uh, you can just drop them in the chat box. We can take it up in today's class or next class, so that all your confusion has been cleared. About this screenshot, we will talk about this in a separate section, separate class entirely, because it's the entire process of how submission is done on software. We will talk about Lawrence document here, and we'll see how it's done. So, okay, moving to module 3 now. I'm guessing there are no more questions. You should also go through ICH M4QR1 for better understanding of all the data that is being submitted. But since we are already discussing module 3, it'll help you understand what data is actually, summarized here in module 2. So, just a second. Okay, so this is your module 3 of ICH M4QR1. The scope of the guideline is intended to provide guidance on the format of a registration application for drug substance and the corresponding drug product as defined in the scope of ICH guideline Q6A NCE biotech. Okay, we talk about NCE, new chemical entity, and biotech products. Okay, so all the document that is required for the registration application for drug substances and the drug products are being talked about in module 3 of quality data. Okay, this format may also be appropriate for certain other categories of the product, but here we will only stick to NCEs and biotech. The module 3 also deals with, module 3 is required to determine the applicability of this format for a particular type of product. And for that, the applicant should consult with the appropriate regulatory authority if this format can be followed for the submission to that respective authority, or there are any changes that needs to be incorporated as as the regulatory body specifies. Okay, the text following the section titles is intended to be explanatory and illustrative only. The content of the section should include relevant information and describe an existing ICH guidelines. If I find any dossier for you, for as an example, for you to review and understand what are the data that we are submitting, I will share that with you in the next class. But right now, just try to understand how the data is being submitted, in what format, what kind of content we are talking about when we're talking about module 3 data submission. So yes, this is only for your illustrative explanatory purposes. The body data in this guideline merely indicates where the information should be located. Okay, body data matlab, we are providing a format so that we know in what in a to understand how the data is being submitted across different regions and how it is harmonized, because one body data is applicable to a lot of regulatory bodies. SRA has accepted this body data, and other regions, GCC and all of them, are coming around to accept the same as well. Okay, so there is table of contents, there is body of data. We are just doing an overview of module 3. We will discuss this in detail in the next class. So there's 3.1, which includes table of content of module 3. Then comes your body data, which is divided into 3 to S and 3 to P. 3 to S will talk about drug substances majorly, and 3 to P will talk about your 3 to P will talk about your drug product. 3 to S is divided into 7 subsections. And 3 to P is divided into your 8 subsections, if I'm not wrong. Yes, 8 subsections. Once the data in 3 to P and 3 to S are submitted, there's also appendices, which includes facilities and equipments, adventitious agent safety evaluation, and your excipients, along with regional information and literature references. These are all the data that goes in module 3. You can just read through them once, and we'll take up each section individually. Okay, so take for example drug substance. Let's try to cover drug substance in today's class so that we have enough time to explain drug product and talk about drug product in the next class. So drug substance, you submit general information, which is further divided into 3 sections. The first one is your nomenclature, second is your structure, and last is your general properties. In nomenclature, you have to submit information on the nomenclature of the drug substance, for example, international non-proprietary name, compendial name if relevant, the chemical name of the drug substance, any company or laboratory code that is present, other non-proprietary name, example, national name, United States adopted name, Japanese accepted name, or British approved name, along with chemical abstract services, which registry number, which is also known as CAS registry number. Once you've submitted these data in nomenclature, you will then have to submit data related to the structure in 32S12. Here we will submit data related to the structural formula, including relative and absolute stereochemistry, the molecular formula, and the relative molecular mass should be provided for NCE, new chemical entity, and for biotech, the schematic amino acid sequence indicating glycosylation sites or other post-translation modification in relative molecular mass should be provided as appropriate. So in structure, we are talking about the structure of the NCE or biotech molecule. Then is your general properties, where a list should be provided of physiochemical and other relevant properties of the drug substance, including biological activities for biotech. The reference ICH guidelines are your Q6A and Q6B. You can refer to them to understand about general properties a little bit better. So these are the data that goes in 32S. Also, this format is a way of, authoring the documents for your dossier submissions. Like when you want to submit data related to, general information, this is the body data that you should follow. For example, you write 32S1 general information. In bracket, it's written name and manufacturer. So you need to write the name of your drug substance. Take, for example, acetaminophen. and the name of the manufacturer to be run back C. So you need to provide both the name of the drug substance as well as the name of the manufacturer, and then the relevant information below that. Everywhere where it's mentioned name and manufacturer, you write the name of the drug substance and the manufacturer who's producing that API. Okay. Then comes your manufacturer. So under manufacturer, the 32S2 is divided as 32S21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. Okay, in 6 subsections. 32S11, sorry, 32S21 talks about manufacturer, name, address, and responsibility of each manufacturer. Take for example, drug API is being manufactured at a certain by a certain manufacturer. It's you know it's its packaging is being done by another manufacturer. The raw material is being procured by another manufacturer. The stability testing is conducted by another manufacturer. So all the manufacturers that are involved in the manufacturing and final processing of that API needs to be enlisted under the section 32S21. And each proposed production site or facility involved in manufacturing and testing as well, quality testing, should be provided in this section. Then comes description of manufacturing process and process controls. See, when we are talking about these sections, you please relate to them to module 2 summaries that we have discussed. We talked about manufacturers there as well. Here, what we are doing is we are providing all the information related to manufacture. There, we just summarize the data for a quick overview. Okay. So then is your description of manufacturing processes differs for NCE and biotech. The description of the drug substance manufacturing process represents the applicant's commitment for the manufacture of the drug substance. Information should be provided adequately to describe the manufacturing process and process controls. Everything should be very transparent. There should be no hidden discrepancies in the data that you're providing, because once that's been found, the review gets delayed. There are a lot of questions from the agencies that needs to be addressed. So you need to make sure that every data that you're submitting is transparent and gives full authority, uh, and the manufacturer is taking full authority of the data that is being submitted in the dossier. Okay. For NCE, a flow diagram of the synthetic processes should be provided that include molecular formula, weights, yield ranges, chemical structures of starting material, intermediates, reagents, drug substance, reflecting stereochemistry, and identifies operating conditions and solvent. All these data need to be provided under description of manufacturing process and process control. Then a sequential procedural narrative of the manufacturing process should be submitted. The narrative should include quantities of raw materials, solvents, catalysts, reagents, etc. There should be, if there are any alternate processes, they should be explained and described with the same level of detail as the primary process. And if there are any reprocessing steps, that should be identified and justified in the section. Any data to support the justification should be either referenced to or filed in 32S25. I will show you what 32S25 is. 32S25 talks about process validation or evaluation. So everything that we are providing here in 32S22 needs to be cross-referenced to the data that we are submitting in 32S25. Then for biotech, information should be provided on the manufacturing processes, which typically starts that which typically starts with a vial of the cell bank and includes cell culture, harvest, purifications, modification, reaction, filing, storage, shipping conditions. All this I am sure you have studied in your pharmaceutics. How a new chemical, what are the manufacturing processes in the drug substance manufacturing or for a biotech process. Batches and scale definition needs to be submitted. Data related to cell culture and harvest in a flow diagram should be submitted. Purification, modification, reactions. So the data for biotech products is way too much and way too extensive. Therefore, when we were talking about QoS, we mentioned that yes, 80 pages can be submitted when a product is a biotech product and if there are complex manufacturing processes involved, right? So as you can see, there are a lot of data that needs to be filled in for biotech product. Once that's done, you have to submit data related to control of materials, where all the materials used in the manufacture of the drug substance should be listed, identifying where each material is used in the process. So you can refer to Q6A and Q6B guidelines for more details on the control of materials. For biotech, there's different data that needs to be submitted and different ICH guidelines that needs to be referred to. Then comes your control of critical steps and intermediate. You need to, test you need to submit the test and acceptance criteria performed at critical steps identified in 32S22 of the manufacturing processes. When we were talking about manufacturing processes, there were critical steps that were involved in the manufacturing processes. So all the test and acceptance criteria for those critical steps needs to be provided here in 32S24 under control of critical steps and intermediate. Information on the quality and control of the intermediate isolated during the process should be provided. These are the Q6A and Q6B are the reference guidelines, and Q5C is also a reference guideline that can be studied. Then comes your process validation or evaluation, where all the data related to aseptic processing and sterilization should be included, both for biotech and NCE. Lastly, under your manufacturing processes, you submit a description and discussion of the significant changes made to the manufacturing processes or the site of the drug substance used in producing non-clinical, clinical, scale-up, pilot, and if available, production scale batches. So all this data needs to be submitted under manufacturing process development. Any development that you witness or see during the non-clinical clinical scale-up setups, you need to report, you need to submit the data supporting the same in your 32S26, both for NCE and for biotech products. Okay. So this is about 32S manufacturing. Then is your characterization, where we talk about elucidation of structure and other characteristics for NCE and biotech product and impurities present during the manufacturing, after the manufacture of the drug substance, or initially. All the impurities needs details related to the impurities needs to be submitted in S32. Reference guidelines for impurities are your Q3A, Q3C, Q5C, Q6A, and Q6B. These guidelines talk about different types of impurities, organic impurities, inorganic impurity, nitrosamine, gentotoxic. All the impurities are being talked about in these guidelines. So when you are submitting data related to the impurities, you get a better understanding of what that impurity mean. Then comes your control of drug substance, which will cover data like specifications of the drug substance, analytical procedure used for testing the drug substance, analytical validation information, including experimental data for the analytical procedures used for testing of drug substance, and batch analysis. Description of all the batches and results of the batch analysis, justification for the drug substance specification. All of these data needs to be submitted under your control of drug substances. Okay. Then comes your reference standards or materials, where information on the reference standards of the reference material used for testing of the drug substance should be provided. Followed by 32S6, which talks about container closure system. This is also very important to provide a description of the container closure system, including the identity of materials of constructions of each primary packaging component and their specification. The specification should include descriptions and identifications. Non-compendial method should be included where appropriate. So all the data related to container closure system needs to be submitted here. For functional secondary packaging component that do not provide additional protection, only a brief description should be provided. And for functional secondary packaging component, additional information should be provided. The suitability should be discussed with respect to choice of material, protection from moisture, light, compatibility of the material of construction with the drug substance, including sorption to the container and leaching, or safety of the material or constructions. So when you're submitting data related to container and closure, you need to make sure that the product material that is being used in the production of that container or the closure does not hamper the quality of the drug substance that will be stored in that container closure. So all the data related to the testing is submitted in the container closure packages. Lastly, you submit a stability data, which is further divided into three sections, 32S 7.1, 7.2, and 7.3. 7.1 talks about stability summary and conclusions, the type of studies conducted protocols used and the results of the studies should be summarized. The summary should include results. For example, if we are doing force degradation stability studies, then we need to provide and submit the summary and conclusion of the force degradation studies. And if stress conditions are used, we need to also mention that here in 32S71, as well as conclusions with respect to storage conditions and retest date or shelf life as appropriate. You can read more about, retest or shelf lives in Q1A, Q1B, and Q5C. Then is your post-approval stability protocol and stability commitment. So before, when you're submitting your 32S or a new drug application, you also need to submit your post-approval stability protocol. What will be the protocol that will be followed once the drug is being approved? How will the adverse effects, adverse reactions be monitored? And there should be a stability commitment provided from the manufacturer's side that needs to be included in your dossier. And the last is your stability data, where you are submitting results of the stability studies, example, force degradation studies or stress conditions, long-term studies, etc. These should be presented in an appropriate format such as tabular, graphical, or narrative, and the information on the analytical procedure used to generate the data and validation of these procedures should also be included. You can refer to Q1A, Q1B, Q2A, Q2B, and Q56 for more information on the stability data, because for everything, for stability, for quality, for efficacy, for safety, ICH has provided specific guidelines dedicated to that specific topic. So to understand more about safety, efficacy, stability, you can refer to the guidelines referenced in your ICH M4QR1. Okay, so this was about drug substance module 2 and module 3, and in module 3 we've talked about drug substance only. uh, in the next class, we will talk about drug product, and yeah, we'll see what are the topics, what are the data that is being submitted under 32P section. So yeah, once we've covered module 3, we will just take overview of module 4 and 5, because 4 and 5 deals with clinical and non-clinical data, which is I think not the CMC part, but comes in clinical trials and everything. So we will briefly talk about module 4 and 5, but for 3 to P, we will have an extensive discussion of all the data that is being submitted in 3 to P. And if you have any questions so far, please drop them in the chat box. And this will be it for today's class. We will take up module 3 to P in from the next class, because it's going to be another topic of discussion. Just go through the guidelines that we've talked about here today. I hope I was able to help you understand these guidelines better. And in case of questions, please feel free to drop them. Okay, I'll just give you 2-3 minutes to, just go through what we've talked about, and we can conclude the class then. Okay, so I guess we can conclude this class. I hope today's session was very informative. Once we are done with 3 to P, we will take up a case study to understand this module better. And it will also help you understand what we've discussed so far for module 1, 2, and 3, how these data is being, resourced from different manufacturing plants and compiled into one document and submitted and uploaded on softwares to produce an eCTD, which is then further submitted to the regulatory bodies. So we will talk about that once we've done module 3 entirely. So yes, I hope you all go back home and read about the guidelines for better understanding. And thank you so much for your time. I'll see you in the next class. Have a good day.